So we learned in the 5th Mishnah of the 4th chapter of Yevamot that the rabbis really don't like the situation of the widow, the childless widow, hanging around. They say to the eldest brother, you've got to get on with it. Alecha mitzvah, there's a mitzvah, or chalotz or yabem, either do chalitza or yibum, but you've got to make a decision. And in the 6th Mishnah, the theme is picked up. What if this guy, this eldest brother, makes excuses, or what if he has reasons to delay? Talava katon over deal. Maybe he wanted to hang around until a minor became of age. Actually, we've seen this a little bit about with Onan and Shelah, with the sons-in-law of Yehuda. Yehuda wanted to wait until Shelah became of age. He just wanted to keep Tamar hanging around. Talava katon agdil. He wanted to hang around. This is the eldest brother. Wanted to hang around and wait. He wanted to delay his decision. Tala means to literally to hang, but it can mean also to make a decision dependent on. But I've translated it here in the source sheet as hang around because it goes nicely with hang. Talava katon agdil. So he wanted to hang around until a minor became of age. Or maybe he wanted to wait until the eldest returned from a country across the sea. So maybe we're talking about to the second eldest here. And the second eldest says, look, let me wait until my brother comes back from Crete. Or for a deaf mute. Maybe I've got someone who's not capable of marriage right now, but he might improve. Or someone who's mentally deficient. There might be all kinds of reasons for delaying, and the halacha is ein shomin lo. We do not listen to him. Eila omrim lo, but we say to him, alecha mitzvah or chalotz or yabem. The commandment is on you, either perform chalitza or perform yibum, just as we ruled in the previous Mishnah. We don't hang around, either do chalitza or do yibum. What about the inheritance? And maybe this is an incentive, actually, to perform yibum. What about the inheritance of the dead brother, the dead childless brother? Someone who performs chalitza. So he's got a choice. He can do chalitza or yibum. If he chooses to do chalitza, he doesn't want to marry his dead brother's widow. He's just regarded as one of the other brothers in respect of the inheritance, i.e., he doesn't inherit any less, and he doesn't inherit any more. In other words, the decision to do chalitza doesn't affect his inheritance. And if the father was living, the estate belongs to the father. So the rules of inheritance were in the time of the Mishnah that if a brother died without heirs, the father would inherit the property. But if the father was not around to inherit the property, it would be split between the brothers. So the brother who carried out chalitza would get his share with the other brothers. That's someone who does chalitza. What if he did yibum? Hakones et yevimto zacha ba nechasim shel achiv. If you marry your Yevamot, if you marry your dead brother's widow, you acquire the brother's estate. So there is a financial incentive. You acquire the brother's estate if you take care of your brother's widow. Rabbi Yudal is going to disagree. Rabbi Yudal Mer, bein kach ubein kach im yesh sham av nechasim shel av. Rabbi Yudal says, look, in either case, if the father was living, the estate belongs to the father. And I don't think the halacha goes according to Rabbi Yudal, actually. The brother gets the responsibility and the cost, and he gets the possessions. But even though the brother who performs chalitza he's not fined in terms of his share of the inheritance, he has an equal share in inheritance, there are other restrictions, and we've learned these restrictions at the beginning of the 4th chapter, but we learned them out of order, and we're just going to come back to them now very quickly. Someone who performs chalitza with his Yevamah, is forbidden to marry her relatives, and she's forbidden to marry his relatives. You can't marry a close relative of your wife, and you can't marry a close relative of someone you've divorced. And chalitza is like divorce, because as soon as the dead brother dies, the bond of yibum is created, and it needs chalitza to dissolve it. So chalitza is like divorce, and it's treated like divorce. And it means you can't marry the relatives of your chalutza. And the Mishnah is going to spell it out. Hu asur, he's forbidden. Be'ima, forbidden to marry his mother. Uva emima, and her mother, and her grandmother. Uva av aviha, uva em aviha, and his grandmother on the other side. Uva vita, and her daughter. Uva vat vito, and her granddaughter. Uva vat bana, and her granddaughter by her son. Uva achota bizman shehi kayemet, and her sister while she's alive. We're not allowed to marry two sisters while they're still alive, but it is permitted to marry two sisters after one of them is deceased. And the other brothers are permitted to do all these things. They don't have the status of a divorced husband. And on her side, Vehi asura be'aviv u'avi aviv. She's forbidden to marry his father and his grandfather, uvivno and his son, uven veno and his grandson, uvachiv and his brother, uven achiv and his grandson, and his uven achiv and his nephew. And then going on the same theme, someone who does chalitza for his Yevamot, for his brother's widow. So he does chalitza, and his brother marries her sister, Vamate, and dies. So we got another brain teaser here. The Mishnah is going to rule choletzet velo mitya bemet. She gives chalitza, she doesn't do yibum. Let's have a look at the picture. So we've got Alice, actually just Alice and Betsy in this diagram. So Alice is married to Alex. Alex dies. She could do yibum with Bob, but actually Bob does, they do chalitza. So she does chalitza with Bob. So Alice has the status of someone who's divorced from Bob as a chalutza. And meanwhile, Betsy, who's Alice's sister, she marries Bob's brother Charlie. And then Charlie dies. It's like a Shakespeare play. Charlie dies. So the question that the Mishnah wants to explore is, okay, Bob's done chalitza with Alice. What about Betsy, Alice's sister? She might need chalitza or yibum. And the Mishnah is saying, look, you can't marry the sister of your divorcee. You can't marry a relative of your divorcee. You can't marry a relative of your chalutza. So she has to do, Betsy will have to do chalitza. She can't do yibum. That's the situation. If Bob, the relationship between Bob and Alice is one of chalitza. What if Bob had actually married Alice and divorced her? What if we said divorce and chalitza are very similar? Okay, we can see we can't do yibum on the sister of our chalutza. Can we do yibum on the sister of our divorcee? Let's look at the end of the Mishnah. V'chein hamagaresh et ishto, someone who divorces his wife. And then the same thing happens. V'nasa achiv et achota, and his brother marries her sister. Vamate, and his brother dies. Harezo patura mina chalitza umina yibum. In this case, she's exempt from chalitza and from yibum. She's completely exempt. And we remember, we've said that if there's a real question of erva, of a forbidden relationship, chalitza is not needed. Yibum is forbidden. Yibum never arises. And because yibum never arises, chalitza is not necessary. So the Mishnah seems to be teaching us that in the case of the sister of the divorcee, there's some deep, deep prohibition, which is not the same as the question of the sister of the chalutza. The chalutza and the divorcee are different. And it's explained in the Gemara in Yevamot. And we're going to learn Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan's Chavruta. Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said, Kan Shana Rabbi. Here, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi taught. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is referred to in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, as Rabbi. He's just Rabbi. He's just the rabbi. He's the great sage. So he's taught us something in this Mishnah. Achot grusha midivrei Torah. The sister of one's divorcee is actually forbidden by Torah law. That's why Yibum doesn't arise, Chalitza is not necessary. You cannot marry the sister of your divorcee. Maybe we can think of social reasons. Maybe you've married one woman and you kind of rather fancy her sister, and you cannot divorce your wife and then marry her sister. It's absolutely forbidden by Torah law. Where we're going to learn it out from, I'm not sure, but you absolutely cannot do it. But Reish Lakish goes on to say, Achot chalutza midivrei sofrim. The sister of one's chalutza is only forbidden by rabbinic law, in a sense that this seems to be a lesser prohibition. And maybe the question of chalutza is that there aren't, we can see with a question of chalitza that there aren't the kind of perverse incentives that might arise with the sister of the woman that you just divorced.